Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yeah, we're back. Back for some Tottenham Hotspur chat. It's kind of been quite a quiet few days, which is why there's been a bit of a gap between. I even managed to get away. Well, only for a weekend. About 36 hours. I popped to Bath. Don't really normally do UK trips because they're more expensive. Bath's lovely, by the way, if you ever get the chance. But nothing happened. Normally, me going away, it's almost like a guaranteed kickstart to something happening in the world of Tottenham Hotspur. But even that didn't get things moving. I do think it's the tournaments. I think the tournaments are just stopping a big old merry-go-round of transfers that kind of affect everyone. Talking about merry-go-rounds, and I don't know why, I've not even nothing to do with merry-go-rounds. What a strange way to segue into this, but I was going to say, I did a podcast earlier, the podcast, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, with my colleague Rob Guest, which you might listen to, you might not. And we mentioned on there that we hadn't realised that we'd actually gone past the 150 mark of episodes. And actually that made me just think and look before I started today. I've done 312 videos. I'd imagine 3 to 4 of those are travel videos. But that means that we passed the 300 mark for videos. My word, that's a lot of talking. That's a load of waffling. That is a load of you poor people having to listen to that for the last, 3-4 years or so. Wow. Yeah. Just can't believe we've reached this far. We've come this far together. So again, with this video, back to normality rather than looking back over the past. It's just going to kind of be one of these that I'm trying to do at the moment. Slightly shorter. Just, I was going to say more regular, but that hasn't really even been enough. So I think, we're 7 days apart in these videos. But I'd found out a little bit of news just before, which I can start off on this. And of course, we can look at pre-season and things like that and what's happened so far in recent days. So the little thing I'd heard, which I wrote a piece on actually just before I came on here, understand Spurs are in advanced negotiations. Sorry to end this in a less exciting way than the sentence actually suggests it's going. But they're going to agree a huge new matchday shirt sleeve sponsorship deal, which I expect to be announced this month, pretty much in the next couple of weeks. I'm sorry. I know that sentence was, if anyone didn't know what was to come, that was quite a cruel way of saying it. I didn't mean it. As I was saying it, I know that sounded like advanced negotiations to sign Messi or something like that. Yeah. This is Tottenham. So at the moment, it's a shirt. Matchday shirt sleeve sponsorship deal. But it does have knock-on effects to a degree. So just a little bit of background if you're not aware. Spurs did sign a 5-year deal with Cinch. 2021. That obviously has not lasted those 5 years. The online car selling company, as they are, had an option to get out after 3 years, which seems to be something that they're doing at the moment. They ended their deal with the Scottish Premiership, the Football League, prematurely as well. So I think just pulling back from sponsorship commitments. So that meant that Spurs suddenly, we've already spoken about the training wear sponsor, which we know is at BetMGM, but they also had the shirt sleeve sponsorship deal had come to an end. Strangely though, that actually benefited Tottenham because sponsorship values have rocketed in the last few years, especially since 2021. So that allowed Spurs to look out there and see other deals to do. And from what I understand, they are making a big jump in this sponsorship deal. It's, from what I understand, it's going to dwarf the Cinch deal, which was, I think, about 10 million a year. And yeah, so we'll find out exactly the details of that in the coming weeks. But the reason that is also a good thing in a transfer sense, as soon as I put it out on Twitter, I actually forgot. I normally, whenever I do anything that's business related at Tottenham, I always accompany it with, yes, and they can play up front, they can play at right back, whatever little thing. Because I know they're coming, and I get it, it's funny. It's a funny little thing because Spurs have this, their links with the business deals as well. And I forgot to put that, but I did remember to just do it afterwards. But it does have some kind of transfer connotations because sponsorship deals are in even firmer, fuller focus right now. That's a lot of Fs because of the profit and sustainability rules. And bringing more revenue into the club allows you to spend more now without the fear of getting penalised, docked points, fines, whatever you want to call it. So bringing in a big sponsorship deal, which I'm imagining over whatever the span of it is going to be, whether it's going to be a 3 or 5 year one, is going to be a hefty sum of money. That then means that Spurs can spend against that. So, hey, if you want to take it in one way, you can take it as, no real excuse not to get deals done if there's more money coming into the club than previously would have done. So, yeah. So, look, some people may be very much like, boring, who cares? But yes, in today's current climate, with a lot of clubs being very, or getting into trouble or being careful with these things, it's actually kind of a good thing. And look, I know there's some people out there who will just believe that's never going to go anywhere near the first team. It's going to go in people's pockets, whatever it is people say nowadays. But ultimately, it kind of it can only be, surely you can find it on the books. I don't know. I'm no financial expert, but the idea is that it all goes back into the team. And the idea, certainly with the profit and sustainability rules, is that it allows them to spend. So like I say, no excuses in that regard. You might remember, I think I mentioned on the previous video, that they were previously had negotiations over the shirt sleeve sponsorship with the South African government, the SA Tourism arm, as it is called. That deal itself, back then, there were reports in South Africa that claimed that was going to be a 3-year deal, which was worth about £42.5 million with the exchange rate at that time, which technically is about 3 million less in today's rate. But if you'd worked that out over 3 years, that would have been £14 million a year. So whether this deal is going to be something like that or even more, we'll find out. But from what I understand, it is considerably more than the Cinch deal was. So more money towards transfers. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Don't shoot the messenger. But yeah, so that plus the BetMGM deal, which is I think about £10 million a year. Cinch was £10 million a year, but this is going to be considerably more. The AIA deal, the Nike deal, all of that, that's a fair old whack of sponsorship that comes into the club every single year, which can be offset against transfer spend. And look, I'm going to say it because I know everyone keeps asking it, and as soon as I put it out, I had a couple of replies. What happened to the stadium naming rights? Just to fill in on that in case you missed it, the club have said on a few occasions, Daniel Levy at various public events, that the club have found an unexpected benefit to just having Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on the name of the stadium. They found that they've actually got a lot of commercial ventures out of that. So when the likes of, I don't know, Beyonce, Gaga, people like that are playing at the stadium and it's the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, or the NFL are playing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, actually that's bringing in, through other ventures, far more sponsorship into the stadium. So I guess it's an offshoot or a balancing act, I suppose, of do you take a very lucrative sponsorship deal for the stadium naming rights, but then does that cancel out a lot of the other stuff you're getting because of the brand and name recognition of the club? Don't know. That's currently why there's no huge panic towards that. But hey, who knows? They may suddenly agree one. But yeah, and I guess with financial fair play, that would be another thing that could go towards that. But then they're already getting sponsorship. It's not my job to sort out the financial stuff, thankfully. Actually, on the topic of Tottenham and finances, a lot of people in the last week or so sent me the link to Business of Sport, which is a YouTube and podcast channel. I've done an interview with Spurs board member Jonathan Turner. I think he's been a board member for about maybe less than a decade, I think, than that. Actually, it might be far less than that. I don't even know if he was on board when the stadium was opened. I feel he wasn't. I listened to it. It's an interesting listen. He's an interesting chap and he speaks very well, I would say. What I would very much advise people going into it, if you're going to listen to it, is be very well aware of the title of the YouTube channel and podcast channel. It is The Business of Sport. So this is very much a YouTube podcast, whatever you want to call it, episode, because it is both, about business and football. It is not called Business of Winning Trophies, this channel. So if you're going into it thinking, oh, I'd like to know a bit more about the business behind the whole thing and how you create extra revenue in a club, you will find it interesting. Little bits of insight into the boardroom, the way things work. If you are going into it trying to understand why Spurs have only won one trophy, in the last quarter of a century or something, you're going to be disappointed, and you're probably not going to enjoy it, because it's not that kind of thing. It's not going to be an explanation of why that has happened or hasn't happened. But I guess technically you could argue he's explaining how the club have expanded its revenue base to then compete in the future consistently with the big clubs that have their own huge revenue from different means. Again, you know, that's going to sound slightly hollow in the respect of they haven't done that yet. You know, they haven't competed on a consistent basis, other than 2 to 3 years under Pochettino, when they were right up there in the league and obviously reached the Champions League final and that, but they were not winning trophies, of course. But yeah, it's interesting if you make sure you go into it the mindset of it's on the business side of things, and talking about customers and value for customers and things like that. He is a Spurs fan. It certainly sounds like, and I do think he appreciates a lot of elements of that sort of side of things. But like I say, yeah, if you're going into it expecting a big kind of reveal on anything other than business elements of it, you're going to be disappointed, and some people may well be angry. There's a lot of angry types out there, of course. But if you go into it just looking for business stuff, then there's that side to it. I thought it was quite interesting. It's without sounding kind of like, ooh, look at me. I don't feel I learned a lot from it, other than some little insights behind the scenes, because it's a lot of the business stuff we've kind of covered over recent years. But I do think for a lot of people, it's going to be some new stuff in there. But it's definitely not going to be for everyone. I think that's the best way to put it. But yeah, if you're interested in the business of football, by all means, give it a watch. It's about 45 minutes or so. I thought the questions were interesting. They kind of tried to test him and challenge him on a couple of subjects as well. So, but yeah, it's a different kind of thing to what you're expecting. You know, I'm sure if it was Daniel Levy doing that, there'd be a lot of different kinds of questions. But then whether that would be on that certain thing, I don't know. But anyway, pre-season has begun. It is up and running. We are now on, as I'm recording this, they'll have come to the end of day 4 of pre-season work. Obviously, Ange Postecoglou is back. He's had a summer relaxing in Greece on a deck chair, in his own words, after a few days in Melbourne after that game against Newcastle, and of course doing some punditry duties with ITV. He did actually an extra game than was expected, but he did in between that, from what I understand, pop back to Hotspur Way. So he was there in between the 3rd game he did, and I think it was a knockout round game he did as well. Was it England? Oh, I can't remember who it was now. But anyway, yeah, he was back for a little spell, and then he returned fully on Friday. All the coaches were back on Friday. Players were back on Saturday doing their various tests with the sports science staff. And Sunday, they got the ball out on the grass. Gone are the days when they would run the players for years. That'd be awful. For days before they even saw a football. It's not like that anymore. Obviously, we saw 2 new faces arrive and one returning one in Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, the 2 new faces, and the returning one, of course, Timo Werner. So yeah, you know, there have been deals done, not as many as we would have liked, of course, but there have been some done. Yeah, Lucas Bergvall, God, you notice him coming. That shock of bright blonde hair. I was saying this to Guesty earlier. When we report on games, sometimes there's moments like you go, like, who put in that ball? Who you're kind of trying to look and stuff. We'll know when Lucas Bergvall does, because he is going to stand out on a football pitch with that hair. It's yeah, it's very going to be his trademark, I think. It was interesting when there's a little on the video they put out. He rocked up in the car park and Postecoglou was there. They had a little kind of meeting, not meeting. That sounds weird, isn't it? Talking around like a table or something. A little chat in the just say playground or car park. I'm losing my mind now. That would be very weird. I mean, I know they're young signings, but that would be odd. I think I said car park. I don't know. It's been a long day. That's the trouble with recording videos at the end of a day. So there's this footage of Postecoglou and Bergvall having this little car park chat. I would imagine that either Postecoglou was arriving at the same time or he was heading across that car park to somewhere. I would imagine he wasn't waiting in the bushes ready to pounce as if to go, I see you, to Bergvall when he rocked up. But yeah, poor old Bergvall's got his second pre-season in a matter of months. He told me that out in May, because the Swedish season started in when was it? I've got it written down here somewhere. April. Sorry, yeah, no, April. They have 3 to 4 months of pre-season from January to April. So he stopped pre-season in April, had a couple of months of league football in Sweden, and now he's got another one. But as he told me, I'm not going to complain. You know, he's got his move. There was this little moment with him impressing the sports science staff. They had to do among the many tests they do, is one where they're on. I think they're on their knees. Is it? It's on their knees, or the stand. It might be the standing up. But either way, their feet are strapped down, and they're meant to kind of lean forward as far as they can using their core strength. And they're meant to go all the way almost until like their nose or whatever is touching the floor, to see whether without their hands they can keep their body up. And they showed loads of them like all stacking it towards the end and falling forward. Bergvall's insane. You know the Smooth Criminal Michael Jackson thing where they kind of lean forward? That's essentially Bergvall. He somehow managed to... He was very close to the ground before he had to put his hands down. I don't know what that means, if that's of any benefit to him in the world of football, but certainly has a very strong core strength. So, and there was someone, you could hear the coach saying like, oh, that's amazing, or that's incredible, or something like that. So building him up already. Because this is a big period for him and Archie Gray. Interestingly, Spurs just did a little photo from above the training ground entrance taken down with the players walking out, and you can see Bergvall and Gray in deep conversation. Wouldn't that be great if like they become mates? I don't know why it's that important, but it would be good. They're so talented young 18-year-olds in their respective countries. They're like in the kind of seen as the wonder kids, the generational talents of their kind of areas, as it were. It'd just be quite cool if they just develop this very close bond on and off the pitch. So, you know, you often find that players that are like that, the top players that have that bond on the pitch, is replicated, and it's huge. I mean, we saw it with Harry Kane and Dele Alli, Harry Kane and Sonny nowadays, and you know, Christian Eriksen with a number of those players at Spurs alone. Gareth Bale and Jan Vertonghen used to link up down the left really well as in that kind of. Was it just a year, was it, before Gareth headed off while Jan was still there? Jan Vertonghen retired from international football as well this week. But yeah, you know, you've got someone like Timo Werner who is now going to come back for another season. He's kind of used to the Postecoglou way. For Graham Bergvall now over the next, you know, month or so, this is a huge period for them to really get used to it. Hopefully not get hamstring injuries, because we know a lot of them get those in the first season as they adapt. They're both known for their fitness and their box-to-box attributes, but this is a step up from both of the leagues they've been in. You know, Championship is a physical league, but the Premier League is another step up in tempo. Swedish League to Premier League is going to be a bit of a bigger jump. And like I said before, a few of the coaches around Broma Poikana and Jurgen have told me they reckon up to about 6 months adaptation period. But other people have said, you know, he's got the technique and the tactical intelligence that it may be even quicker than that, Lucas Bergvall. So we'll see. But yeah, it's kind of down to the coaches, I guess, to make it as seamless as possible, really. Now the Spurs link to that goalkeeper. There's so many rumours out there right now. So you've got the Spanish media going with Spurs leading Arsenal and Real Madrid to sign a goalkeeper, Joan Garcia, with a £25 million release clause in his contract. Want him to provide cover and competition for Vicario. You can't rule it out, but that would be a strange move for me. I personally, again, it's not my money, but I wouldn't spend £25 million on another goalkeeper when I feel like there's other priorities to put that money towards. That would seem strange, and it doesn't seem like a very Tottenham thing to do, spend that sort of money on a backup goalkeeper, not a backup goalkeeper, a goalkeeper to compete with your number one. But hey, could be wrong, that's just my kind of feeling on it. And the other one that just popped up as well was final stage in completing a deal to sign Fenerbahce midfielder Sebastian Szymanski, £25 million plus bonuses. Haven't heard too much on him either. I'd asked around about him. Let's have a look. I feel like I'd asked a few people about him before. Yeah, nothing really came of that, checks into that. So unless something has very quickly developed on that. But hey, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Like I said, we're in this funny little lull right now at the moment in stuff. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Turkish media, it could be right. They often go for some quite wild links. You know, I looked him up before. He certainly had a hell of a season. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Not a player that I've heard anything about recently, but then I haven't asked about him recently. So where was I? Back to pre-season. Sorry, I will do that occasionally because little bits and pieces. We're at that kind of period where you've kind of got to look at stuff. And again, please don't aggregate to say, Gold says that isn't happening or that isn't happening. I'm not saying that. I'm just not aware of it. That's all. But it just, yeah, certainly the goalkeeping one just seems an odd move, unless it's like all up front. Although it's a release clause, would it be all up, all in kind of future payments? That wouldn't make any sense. But yeah, who else have we had? Sonny's back in pre-season. Sonny came back on Monday, his birthday. Poor guy, 32 years old, and had to go straight into double sessions of training stuff. The reason he was back a little bit later was because South Korea had matches that stretched a little bit later than the other games that the non-tournament players were at. I think they were up to June the 11th, their game against China. I watched the footage of Sonny leaving Incheon International Airport on Sunday. It's just amazing. I will be there. What was it, later this month? I will certainly not be getting any kind of reception. Sonny's was amazing. I just find it brilliant that the respect that the Korean people have for Sonny, because it's just not something we really do in this country. We have a cult of celebrity. We build people up, and I guess we kind of knock them down. That's the way we are. And look, media are part of that as well. Absolutely not excusing ourselves from that at all. But in Korea, just this kind of respect they have for Sonny, and not only as a player, but I think how he represents the country abroad, and just, yeah, I guess that's the key thing. And they're so good at finding out when Spurs or Sonny are going anywhere, Korean people. I've found that certainly 2 years ago. They just seem to know everything. So many fans. I'm talking about thousands were turning up at places. Incredible. Great detective work by many Korean people involved. Whereas other countries I've gone to on pre-season tours and stuff, and people are kind of desperately trying to search for that. I don't know how people find out in Korea, but fair play. Fair play. But yeah, so Sonny left on Sunday, and there was a big old crowd to say goodbye to him. They were giving him birthday cards. Someone had made a cake he blew out the candles of. It was all very sweet. And I was saying this to Gessie as well earlier, that I love the juxtaposition of the way he is with the fans, and how good he is with them and how patient he is. And then he gets inserted straight back into kind of the laddish culture of the dressing room at Spurs and being part of the gang again. And it's funny seeing these two different sides to him. He almost seems like, I know he's the captain of Spurs and we've seen him be very mature and lead the team, but you also see him kind of just enjoying himself as like one of the boys, I suppose, in the dressing room. And it's you kind of, maybe it's just a moment to forget, I guess, the weight of responsibility that's on his shoulders as the captain of Spurs, captain of South Korea as well, and a national hero to boot. So yeah, so Sonny is back. Manor Solomon has been back in training as well, which is good. I'm sure they'll be being very cautious with him because obviously having the knee issue and the setback as well. But yes, are we allowed to cliche say it's like a new signing? I'm not going to, but you could if you wanted to at a push. And no, I'm not saying that's another signing Spurs have made this summer. Absolutely not. Troy Parrott hasn't been pictured yet in pre-season training. From what I understand, he has been at Hotspur Way though. He had been doing some rehabilitation work on a little injury picked up with Ireland last month. I kind of get the impression that that's now sorted. So whether we'll now see him in photos or not, they don't always show everyone in photos. Sometimes you know, you might wonder, is a coach involved or anything? Like, I think I've only seen one of the new coaches, Sergio Raimundo, so far, as I don't think I've seen anything of Nick Montgomery. That's not to say he's not there. From what I understand, he was going on Friday to start and everything. So it's just who they show. And I think it will be the same with players as well. With Troy, same as before, AZ Alkmaar seem to be the ones that want him the most and look like the most likely destination. But as of yet, have not been able to agree a deal. Who knows? By the time this is published, they may well have done that. But at this point, they hadn't. Who else? It's just weird seeing like the players who are just clearly not part of the plans back there, like Jed Spence, Sergio Reguilon. Sergio Reguilon, I just kind of always remember him as the young, fresh-faced guy that came in from Real Madrid in 24 years ago. He was like one of the young little joker of the group, and now he looks so much older. He looks more mature. He's kind of got the same look in essence, but he is a guy that is, I was going to say, be around the block. That sounds very disparaging. But he's been around the game now. You know, just in the last 2 years alone, he's played for Atletico Madrid, Manchester United, Brentford, as well as Spurs. So yeah, he's probably got a bit more world weariness to him. And but yeah, him and Jed, look, we think that it seems very unlikely that they're going to be part of Postecoglou's plans. I'm sure people would love it in certain respects, but yeah, he's kind of looked at them before. He knows what they're all about. You never know, I suppose. They could have the most amazing pre-season that just convinces him otherwise, but you would sense that their future lies elsewhere. With Jed, Genoa want him back again, but haven't been able to agree a deal. Spurs' valuation is kind of more than they're looking to spend. With Sergio Reguilon, I thought there'd be loads of interest, but there hasn't been too many links yet for him. It could be to do with, I think he's on quite decent wages at Spurs, and it depends what Spurs are valuing him at. It all plays a part, I guess. But yeah, we'll find out kind of what happens with him in the weeks ahead. But I'd be shocked if he's at Spurs next season. And yeah, it's just funny to see these players back. Like Alejo Veliz as well, back after that dreadful Sevilla loan, which was of no real benefit to him whatsoever. And he's kind of back in there. You'd think he goes on loan again because of foreign player numbers. But yeah, just funny to see him back. And I think players trying to prove a point, like himself, James Maddison. I know he's not, you know, he is going to be part of the plans next season. But even for him, seeing what England are doing, you know, managed to get to the semi-final, and him not playing a part of that, he's going to want to prove a point. He's going to be on a real mission this season, which could be a very good thing for Spurs. I don't know when I went so high at the end of that sentence. Obviously, like I said, it's not just players, the couple of new players that Postecoglou is working with. There's also the new coaches, as I mentioned. Got Nick Montgomery and Sergio Raimundo coming in, which I still think is a really weird dynamic. I'm really hoping that it's a good side of it we see, and that they know each other inside out and can kind of work alongside each other really well. Because the alternative is plonking a manager and as assistant manager within a group beneath a younger senior assistant coach in Matty Wells and Postecoglou. It could be a recipe for disaster, but my hope is that it actually goes the other way, and that they just work really well within the unit and they know each other's strengths and weaknesses as well. We shall see. And they just hopefully, I think it's a good test for Matty Wells. I'd imagine that's come into Postecoglou's thinking as well, because when you were a manager, and Postecoglou had this as a young manager, you will have to manage players who are older than you, especially if you get into the coaching game in your early 30s. And it's about getting that respect from the older people, even though they might feel they know better. So for Matty Wells, this is probably a good experience for him to have to kind of convince older coaches who have been there and have been managers. And I mean, I guess it's even to a degree with Ryan Mason. I know he's younger, but Ryan Mason obviously has been a caretaker manager a couple of times. And yeah, I think it's probably a good experience for him. I mean, I've been there on a very different level. I've been a sports editor at newspapers where I had older members of staff. Sometimes they'd been sports editors before themselves, and it's all part of the experience and trying to convince people to do what you want them to do, even though they might feel they know best from their previous experience. But previous experiences don't always apply to the way things are in different circumstances, times, whatever. So yeah, interested to see how that all works. and which other players stick around beyond pre-season. It's a little bit like the NFL and kind of the training training camps that you have, and which players actually make it through to the season. Anyone that watches Hard Knocks sees like the various players getting cut before the final squad is announced, and it's kind of a bit like that with Spurs and any Premier League club, especially at Spurs right now, because it's such a big squad. I mean, you look at it now without all of the tournament players who haven't come back yet, and it's a big squad there once everyone comes back from their various loans. And take into account the amount of players they've already let go, like Joe Rodon's left, Eric Dyer, Tanganga, Sessegnon, players like that. Tanguy Ndombele is gone. You know, imagine what it would have been like. It would have been standing room only. It would have been so difficult. So there are going to be a lot of players that have to go. You know, Brian Hill, we haven't even mentioned him yet. You know, he's back there in pre-season with a bit of a shorter bowl haircut. Always a very fit player, very good in terms of the pre-season stuff, but obviously hasn't worked for him. He's been there since 2021, and he's made so few appearances and contributed so few goals and assists. It just surely isn't going to happen for him now. You'd imagine he goes elsewhere. Someone like Emerson Royal, AC Milan would love to sign him. Will he even be there anymore? Richarlison wants to stay, but Spurs, we've said before, would be willing to consider an offer if it came in. You know, you never know. A big offer comes in from a Saudi Pro League side. Maybe he gets tempted. Maybe certainly others. I imagine Spurs would be, mainly because he's had 2 years where he's had injury absences. I still think that he's going to have a big season. I've just got a funny feeling Richarlison's going to have an absolute smasher of a season. Lots of young players involved as well. Jamie Donnelly, Mikey Moore, Luca Gunter, George Abbott, Tyrese Hall, Alfie Devine, Ashley Phillips. Dane Scarlett as well has been in there. It's difficult. Some of those are now kind of considered first team. I actually noticed, I think, on the first team squad list, if you look on the website, Alfie Devine is now on that. Whether that means anything or nothing at all, I don't know, but just noticed that. So, yeah, keep an eye on George Abbott. I just got this funny feeling that this season for him is going to be, whether it's at Spurs or on loan, is going to be a big one in his development. Had a really important season last time out. Very young captain of the under-21s. Brooklyn Lions Foster went off. And, you know, George Abbott kind of took over a bit of a leadership role. He was playing everywhere. He was in midfield. He was sometimes a right back, sometimes as a centre back. And I get this real feeling that there's kind of a push within the academy to kind of get the first team, just give him more looks and more chances because they feel he's really developed. So yeah, keep an eye on George Abbott. But actually, he kind of plays a part in the next thing I was going to talk about, because Spurs do actually have a bit of a centre-back problem in this pre-season. Because you've got Mickey van der Ven, currently still at the Euros with the Netherlands. Radu Dragic has been at the Euros with Romania. And Christian Romero, currently at the Copa America with Argentina. So that means that actually, when you've let Rodon and Dyer go, and Tanganga as well, it's only Ashley Phillips. He's the only natural centre-back Spurs have right now. And obviously, he only turned 19 a fortnight ago. This could be quite a big period for him, though, because you look at his loan at Plymouth last season, the second half of the season. He was superb. He won their Young Player of the Year, even though he'd only been there for half a season. He was that good. Some real pivotal performances in keeping them up, Plymouth. So this could be that kind of part of the season where Postecoglou said he wants another centre-back, and we're assuming towards the end of the window, more likely, they sign another centre-back. You could find that actually, if Ashley Phillips has a blinding pre-season and Postecoglou's like, oh, wow, you have come on leaps and bounds with that loan. Because, you know, I thought even watching him against Newcastle in the post-season friendly, I know it's not the greatest way to judge a player, but I did feel he looked more mature and his anticipation was great on some interceptions and challenges. And maybe if he comes into this pre-season and absolutely smashes it, then Postecoglou thinks, do you know what? Romero, Van der Ven, Dragic, Phillips, with Ben Davies as experienced backup, that's maybe doable. You know, certainly for the first half of the season, you could look at that. Of course, you know, you're 2 injuries away from a bit of a disaster, and you may well feel he needs another senior centre-back. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. But he is the only one right now. Alfie Dorrington would have been another choice, but unfortunately Alfie, also 19, after that second hamstring injury last season, he had surgery. He's not expected back from that till August, maybe even September. Depends how cautious they're going to be, because he's supposed to be quite a quick healer, Alfie. But he came back last time and obviously had another hamstring problem. So this time they're going to be very, very cautious with him. So that may run on a little bit. So alongside Phillips, yeah, you've got Ben Davies, you've got Emerson, as long as he sticks around, or maybe he will stick around, who knows. But those two are probably likely at some point going to be playing fullbacks or centre-backs again at this point. Like I say, George Abbott can play as a centre-back, so he could be called up to do that. I haven't seen them in the photos, but Dante Casanova, he's only 20. He played much of the second half of last season at centre-back for the under-21s. Tyrell Ashcroft, who's a right-back. I think Dante's a full-back as well. Tyrell filled in after Dorrington's injury as a centre-back in a couple of the games towards the end of the season as well. So, yeah, it's a funny one, that. It's one of those where people could claim quite easily, oh, we need loads of centre-backs, get centre-backs in. But it's kind of because Romero, Dragic and Van der Ven are not there. Once they come back, suddenly you've got, three absolute top centre-backs who aren't getting game time. I still believe, and this is my theory, and other people may think you should sign another massive centre-back as your fourth one in terms of, stature rather than size. My feeling is that I think there's going to be enough struggle, not struggles, you're going to get game time with the European ones as well. But I think there's enough competition with those three. Put Phillips and Davies in there as well. I think that's probably enough myself. But hey, wouldn't be against it if they can sign another. I would say, though, if you are signing another one, you're probably not going to put loads of money towards it, which is why I know that there was a Calafiori links before. I kind of always felt like the price tag that was going to be involved with him, he was going to go to a club maybe where he was going to get more minutes. But hey, there's a lot of competition. It looks like Arsenal currently are the ones most linked with him. So there's a lot of, competition there. Maybe you could argue with the Champions League having to play that as well, you can't really drop your level across the competitions. Whereas maybe in the Europa League, you could have you don't have to have the absolute best. I don't know. It's a difficult. I don't know. Personally, I just put my money elsewhere, but it's not my money, so it doesn't really matter. So we've got an unofficial behind closed doors pre-season friendly this Saturday. Spurs, Cambridge United, they'll be taking on. I'll be that day at the under-21s. They're at Enfield Town for their unofficial friendly. So I'll be there while trying to also work out what's happening a few miles away at the training ground. Pre-season behind closed doors friendlies are often, I'm not saying this one will be, but often they're like really fragmented things, like 3 30-minute periods, which is essentially like a glorified training session. But it will likely be the first chance that Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, players like that will get to have a go in the team and wearing the Spurs shirt and playing some match football and getting to experience what you're meant to do within the Postecoglou system and setup. Fascinating to see how quickly those two kind of get the hang of it. They're supposed to be both very young, tactically clever players, so hopefully that'll be quite a quick process in that regard. Like I say, it's more about the tempo and things like that. But club normally, we were discussing this earlier, I think normally the club put out like at least photos and a bit of details after a behind closed doors friendly, purely because they know there's going to be a lot of interest in it. I wouldn't imagine there'll be any highlights, things like that, purely because I don't think there'll be even many staff there. It's got very much behind closed doors is pretty much that. It's one for, it's like a training session really. Cue a full replay of the game or something on Spurs Play. After that though, we do have the official friendlies. You've got Spurs obviously go up to Hearts Wednesday, July the 17th. Then they come back, go to QPR, Loftus Road, July the 20th. I think I've had both my accreditations through for those, so I'll be at both of those. Then they fly out to Japan and South Korea, Vissel Kobe, K-League All-Star Team and Bayern Munich. They will play out there before playing Bayern again at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on August the 10th. So we're going to get a double dose of Eric Dyer. Obviously, Harry Kane's not going to be on the tour, but Eric Dyer should be. I'm really hoping that Bayern put him out on the press conference out there. I think he'll be at the end of his contract at Spurs. You know, that kind of passed, what was it, 9-10 days ago. So I'd imagine he'll be even more open in any potential interviews out there. I might even try and see if I can get an interview out, because I just think it'd be really interesting. Trying to think who else might be back. It's very much down to choice. Those who have been at tournaments get 3 weeks off if they want it. They don't always have to take it, of course. Guess you was telling me earlier that Mudryk has gone back to Chelsea about 9 to 12 days after going out of the Euros, something like that. He was there for like their first or second day of pre-season. Radu Dragic would probably be the next one, I guess, him and Højbjerg to go back. With Dragic, I think I worked it out, it would be roughly when they fly on tour if he were to take the 21 days. He may well come back. He may well do some kind of deal where he joins them on the tour, potentially. Or maybe they just say it's more beneficial for you to work at Hotspur Way, which has happened with some players before. I would have thought it would be more beneficial to be out there, personally. If I'm Radu Dragic, I'm probably thinking Van der Ven, Romero, not going to be there, let's be honest, probably with the time frame, unless they decide to come back very early. This is my chance to get out there and just play loads of football under Postecoglou and make him love me. God, that sounds like Julia Roberts in Notting Hill or something. I'm just a centre-back standing in front of an Australian asking him to love me. That was weird. But yeah, so we'll see. I'm trying to think anyone else. Vicario, I guess he didn't play at all at the Euros. Maybe he thinks he's not going to be physically kind of exhausted and maybe just has a week or two and then comes back for the tour, possibly. That would make sense, I guess. But yeah, I mean, look, we all want new signings as well. Of course we do. Me as a journalist and a fan, and you all as fans as well. We want new signings. We want more new faces for that tour, especially to head off on that. I do feel like the tournaments are slowing up so much business. It's very easy to look at it and just go, Spurs, you're rubbish. Postecoglou wanting new signings. And I get that. Look, honestly, I want them just as much as anyone else. But I do feel like anyone that's not only got targets who are playing at tournaments, but also I think clubs aren't selling players, or their replacements for players they might sell are not available until after tournaments, and they're not really willing to move. Because if you look at it, so few of the big clubs have moved yet. Lots of talk, loads of talk. Sometimes I'll say like, oh, you know, obviously Spurs have signed Archie Gray, got Timo Werner back in, and Bergvall, obviously it was done in February, but he's arriving now. And people might say back to me, oh, yeah, but look at, let's say, Arsenal have signed this player or that player, or City have signed this player. And it's like, they actually haven't, though. You know, you look at some of these deals that have been moved to. I think Arsenal, certainly they've signed Raya, haven't they? That deal's become permanent. Trying to think if there's many others who have signed, but there hasn't been too many yet. A lot of talk about what's to come, and that'll be the same with Spurs as well. Yeah, I still think there'll be one or two at least in the first couple of weeks of pre-season, just because Postecoglou will want that. He will demand that, and I think he's in a position where he should be able to get what he demands, really. It feels like there's a bit of a youngish vibe to the signings so far this summer. We've had, obviously, Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, Werner being more experienced, and we're seeing they're looking at players like Desiree Doué, however you want to pronounce it, or should pronounce it. He's only 19. If they do kind of make a real move for him, they definitely really like him. Even people like Jacob Ramsey, they've been linked with as well. You know, he's only, 21, 22, something like that. He's quite a young one as well, which kind of fits not only the Tottenham profile, but Postecoglou. He quite likes to work with young players too. We've seen that over the years. As long as they're good enough, that's always been his kind of thing. And we'll see with the other ones. I haven't really heard anything positive on Eze at all. Still, yeah, I think you'll see that. I don't think many people are really, other than the odd report linking Eze with Spurs, which kind of maybe says everything about him at the moment. But we'll see. We'll see. It's a long window. Many things can change. It may be that he comes back from the Euros and his situation at Palace changes a bit. Like I say, there's been talk of a release clause, but just I feel like it's a little bit more complicated than that, especially for people being told by Palace that they think that they're going to keep him this season. He's not going anywhere. And definitely, I haven't heard anything from kind of around the Spurs end about any kind of real positive, like, oh, Eze and all this sort of stuff. Again, it's not for aggregators, it's just a kind of, this is very early stage stuff, because anything can change. I mean, we saw that with Archie Gray, my goodness. That flipped around within 12 hours or so. So you can't really rule many, if any, players out nowadays in this transfer. There's still just under 2 months left of it. It's so long left. There's so much more to talk about. But we'll see. We'll see. I think there's going to be more names coming out of the woodwork. That's my feeling on this. I feel like the way Johan Lange works, far more secretive than the Paratici way of pretty much everyone, especially in Italy, knowing what was coming. So, yeah, let's see what happens. And like I said, there's players like at tournaments, like Jonathan David, obviously, with Canada at the Copa America. There could be other names other than him that Spurs look at for the striker role. But if it is him that they go for, then, he's still very much tied up and rather busy right now. And look, yeah, I know some deals do get done with players at tournaments, but a lot of players just want to focus on those tournaments and they don't really look at anything else. So, as told you before, I think we're going to have these little flurries of activity. First was around the kind of June 30th financial fair play stuff, which we saw mostly among those clubs working internally with each other. July the 1st, then kicked in, we saw Spurs sign Archie Gray. And I think once the tournament comes to a real end in it's about 5 days' time, I think you'll then see another flurry as people start to really look at their future and changes happen and players can then kind of crack on and move, and other players can also come in and move and stuff like that. So we'll see. We shall see. I should stress, I'd love Spurs to sign Eze. It's just at the moment doesn't feel like that seems to be going anywhere. But who knows? Who knows what the rest of the window brings? But certainly I would say it's interesting that we're getting, it feels like a lot of people, I've said before, they really like Ramsey, they really like Doué as well, and it feels like the reports are trending more towards that. Saw Man City apparently coming out today, or certainly people around Man City have been suggesting that they're not looking to go for Eze. Who knows, maybe someone like Arsenal gets in there. My gosh, that would cause huge fume, wouldn't it? But I don't know. Maybe he just stays at Palace, like Palace seem to be indicating. It's a whole other subject. This wasn't really going to be a transfery one because mainly it was meant to be about pre-season and stuff like that. But I feel like we're going to have a lot more transfer talk to come in future videos. But right, I'm going to head off now. Otherwise, this becomes a very long video and there is some football to be watched as well. So right, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.